Hello there, welcome to Inky Fingers Architectural Art, and I am Inky Fingers. Now today I'm going to be looking at tonal values using just a bottle of India ink. Now because we're just using ink, i.e. no colour, we can't rely, of course, we can't rely on colour, so it's tonal values all around. Light against dark, dark against light, to bring up and build up a picture. And I'm going to be painting a nice bit of urban decay, something that pen and ink is really good at. So let's get started. Now the pens we can use for doing this type of picture, just a single pen, pen and ink, black and white. It all depends of what look you want to what pen you use. Now we can use, of course, fountain pens. Here's just three simple fountain pens. We have first off the Pilot Kakuno. It's a Japanese pen with an extra fine nib, and what you get is a very fine line. Then we can have something just this is the Lamy Safari, which again, this is an extra fine nib, but we can see the difference between a European extra fine nib here and the Japanese extra fine nib. So if you want something really thin, then go for something like the Kakuno, because this is Japanese nibs, completely different to European, but you've still got a very nice little pen. It makes marks. I could go to something like a Fude pen. This is the Duke 551 Confucius. It's a beast of a pen. Which can give some fine lines, but then if you use it as it should with on the Fude nib, you can get some really thick lines. Or you can of course use the traditionalist way and use some steel dipping pens with a bottle of ink, and this ink is Winsor & Newton India ink, the only ink I use for dipping pens. Now the difference with these is they're very versatile. I wouldn't use these outside. I don't think many people use dipping pens outside. Far too messy. You're guaranteed to make a mess because the bottle of ink will be spilt or whatever. This is why fountain pens are so good outside. But in the studio we can use Indian ink. Now, just to make things a tad more complicated, of course you can have pens, dipping nib pens with different nibs. We can see here three completely different nibs, and this is just a small selection of what you can get. But you can get, I think these ones are called drafting pens. These very thin, and you can get some very fine lines. But if you push down on the nib, it opens up and you can get some nice thick lines. Like so. This is a very stiff nib, which I quite like. Then you've got something like this nib. Now I'm not really sure what these shapes are called, but this is, because it's long, it's very flexible. if you push down, you can see the nib opens up quite nicely. So you should get some very expressive lines. So again, you get some very nice fine lines, but very expressive thick lines. Something like that. Very good for sketching. But as I've said, for indoor work, for studio work, pen and wash, or a line, an ink, fully ink picture, I would probably use these 99% of the time, or one of these 99% of the time. Now, what I really like about using ink is that you can get some really expressive lines, and you can also get some really nice textural detailed work. You can draw on grime, decay very easily and quite effectively. So to show this, this is what I'm going to be drawing. It's just two very old on the continent, two very old windows. You can see it's shutters falling to bits, marks and decay on the walls. Absolutely perfect for just using ink. This photograph isn't very good. It's just done on copy of paper. It's a bit grainy. It's a bit sort of pixelated because it's just a pretty small picture. But it doesn't really need to be detailed. As long as you can see some of the details, then the ink will fill in the rest. And also, what's very good about doing just a picture with ink is that you can convert something into black and white, and then you're not worrying about colour. You're just looking at tonal values, which is also a very good exercise in its own right. So, for example, on this picture, we've got white here. We can see, but our lightest tones is the I suppose the stucco wall. Or if I screw my eyes up halfway, so it shuts off most of the mid-tones, then there isn't much of a difference between that and that. So that's quite a high value area, and yet it goes all the way through the greys to pretty much black. So you've got a vast range of tonal values which we can play with and experiment with and learn from. Now, I've already done this. And this is the picture, but as you can see, this one was a colour version. This was done on the 4th of December 2024. But you can see, as this was done with dipping pens, and you can see how blobby it can become. It's got absolutely bags and bags of texture, bags of character. It's just, I've used watercolor washes on this picture. On the one we're going to do today, it's going to be the same, but we're not using color. We're just going to be using ink, dilute washes of ink to get through our light tones all the way through to our deep dark tones. Now, to save time, I've already drawn this out in pencil. It's only drawn on just a bog basic piece of offcut, really, of Bockingford rough paper. It's a little bit smaller than A4. You can see there's not really that much detail in because the pen is going to do everything. We can ink splatter to do other things, but I think this should turn out quite nice, quite urban, quite gritty. So that's all we do, of course, is follow our pencil lines. But I am sort of varying the pressure. Of the pen, just so we get thicker lines and we can get some thinner lines. just to make it look organic. And I'm not, notice how I'm holding the pen. I'm holding it in the long position. If I want detail, I would hold it like this, but if I hold it like that, then it tends to be like that. A very nice, neat line. But I don't want a nice, very neat line. I want more of an organic line. So if you hold the pen down here, then you've got much more of a loose hold. It's the same with a paintbrush. You don't have that much control the more you hold it at the near the end of the shaft. So back to this long hold, and we will just now, I don't know if you can hear that. It's sort of as the pen scratching across the paper. You can hear how I'm sort of putting pressure on and then lifting pressure off to get this sort of organic line. If it was just an even shoo, then that would obviously mean I've just got a continuous even pressure. But again, that would probably give, even at this position on the pen, that would probably give more of a clean line anyway, which, as I said, I don't want to do. I'm not being that neat. I'm sort of roughly following the pencil lines, but if I go off them a little bit, then I really don't care. We want this to look unkempt, urban, gritty. There's some really push down on the pen there to get that really nice thick. And there we go, that one. Now if I did this as what I did there with one of the other pens, it would be a pool of ink, which you might want that, but I want it rough and ready, but not completely uncontrollable, unpredictable. That's why I like these mapping pens. You can still get a really nice organic line. If I push down, see, we get a nice thick line. If I did that with the other pen, then I'll probably be in trouble. That's the windowsill, I think, there. Now I think this is actually looking rather nice already. Now I'm not sure if you can hear the pen strokes on scratching across the paper. It's much more smoother sounding now because I'm not pushing down and making like I did here to make all these different thickness of lines. I'm not doing this. We can see the difference. I do want some more steady lines here. So even pressure on the pen. Now, as I said, this is India ink, Winsor & Newton brand, because that's the only brand I can get locally in a shop. So I never use this ink for fountain pens because there's shellac in it, and it's quite a large particled ink, and it will clog the fountain pens very, very quickly. So no, we don't want that. But this with dipping pens, I think I personally think it is the best sort of ink to use. And there we go, that's the picture inked in. I think it looks pretty organic. It's not too neat. It's got some nice varied lines. It looks like it was drawn with ink. So all we need to do is make sure all this is dry, because the last thing we want to do is to put our hands across a wet ink, and then we'll start to colorize it all in black ink, of course, or different shades of ink. One thing I do is I fill up empty bottles of ink with a little bit of ink. Here's 3 examples. So I just get some full strength ink, I put a little bit in a bottle and then fill it up with water until I get the necessary diluted ink that I want for things. So this is very dilute. This is a little bit less dilute, and this is a little bit less dilute. So weak, bit darker, and if I use this will be full strength black. And it is very much easier to do it this way when you want to paint like shadows or any areas like in the wall where it would be, you know, just dark marks, but not too dark. It's just staining in the wall. Now you could of course take some normal strength ink, put it into a palette and then just add some water to it, same thing. But I prefer to work it all out beforehand, put it into bottles, and then you just pick the bottle up, the necessary bottle, and apply the ink that way. So for example, this ink here is as you can see is quite dilute. This bottle of ink should be a little bit darker, as it is, like so. Whereas this bottle of ink should be the darkest of the 3. Ooh, that is dark. That's quite dark. But we can see we've got a nice light tone, mid-tone and a dark tone. Now let's just take this is the full strength ink. We'll see what this is like. Here we go, there's the full strength ink. Quite a difference. So now that's drying. We can see how this could be, if we go back to this picture, this could be just like a stain in the wall. You could use this. This we could use as the darkness in the windows. This might be a little bit too dark, unless you wanted something really dark. But with these dilutions of ink, you can basically just fill in this picture just as if it was a watercolor, but it would still be a fully ink picture. Now something like this, I always start with the darkest tones, which will be in this case, the darkness in the windows. Because once I've got the dark areas in, then it's much easier to work out what a medium tone is and then the lightest tone. If I put the light tones in first, I may go too, because it's just white paper, I may go too dark. And then when I start to put the dark tones in, there may not be the contrast difference might not be enough. Whereas if I do the dark first, then when I do the light, I know exactly how light it needs to be, even if it means perhaps diluting this ink down a little bit more. But we'll start with this, and we'll start with this ink here, which was this bottle. Now I'm just going to put this in with the brush, just like watercolour. So we are looking into just basically a dark room. There is no window in this. So I'm just going to, just like watercolour, paint it in. Isn't that a gorgeous black? But instead of just having it all dark, I'll get to about here, and then I'm going to dilute it out a bit. I've just cleaned the brush out in water, and I'm just pull it out like that, so it's a little bit lighter there, like so. Look at it, it gives a very nice sort of smooth graduated colour. It's lovely. And I'm going to do the same with this one. Now this does have a window in it, so I can start with, try this lightest ink, the most dilute ink. We'll see that, and we've got this here. Now what's that? Now the only thing is here is that we do have a lighter window frame, so that could be a medium tone, a mid-tone on light. So I think I will just pull that down a bit, and I'd go into this and just pull it in a little bit, so we've still got a little bit that lighter, and I'll go a little bit darker as we go down the bottom, just to make sure I'm looking at light against dark, dark against light. I'm just going to put a touch of blob of dark there, like so. But you can see how much lighter it still dries. So we'll leave that like that. And then we do the same with this, but we can see here we've got a curtain there, so it's only going to be this part that's going to be dark. So again, I'm going to use the mid-tone, well actually it's the darkest of the three, I should say, and I'll just paint this in. I'm going to have this dark all the way down, like so. And then the next thing, because it's still dark, we need the shadows in these slats there, which if we look at this picture I did before, we can see it's very dark in these slats, so we need to put those in. Now again, I'm going to use the darker of the ink, and things I need to get this correct, because if I screw this up, that's it. So let's see, so this needs to be dark, that bit's light, in between there is dark, that bit's light, and we just continue going down there in this way. Until all that's done, and when it's done I'll come back. I've filled in a lot of the blacks. If you look at the picture, you can see the darks in the windows, the darks in the slats, and we've got a little bit of dark where just beyond the curtains and a couple of folds. But it looks quite high contrasty now because we've just got very dark blacks on a white paper. But that, as I said, that gives me a good starting block to judge the other tones, because I've already got the darks in. Because I'm going to now do the curtains. As we have the dark around, if you look at the curtains, we can see the more of a greyish tone, a light grey. So if we look at our little swatches of the diluted ink, we can do it with very dilute, and then maybe put a little bit of the next darkness of ink in. But don't forget that we will be at the end, we will be putting some marks with the pen, some cross hatching or whatever to give detail. But I'm just basically blocking in tones at the moment. So this is the weak ink, and I'll just put some ink around there. I think I'll just dampen that off a little bit. Change your mind halfway through, so I'll just take a little bit of that off. So I think we can have a little bit of light going down the bottom. So it's going to be darker up the top and coming down lighter at the bottom. So I just really want to try and make a little bit of darkness on one side. Lightly as we go down the bottom. Something like that, and then we'll strengthen that up a tad with a slightly darker, like this, the mid-tone ink, just to try and mimic a couple of folds, like for example as it goes around, in and around, like it will be a fold, we'll stick a little bit of dark just in that fold there. So it might be a bit wet, it is a bit wet, but the thing is, I'm looking at the tone of this to the tone of the dark, and I'm looking at the tone of the window frame. So we can have the window frame much lighter, but it will still have a little bit of a tone on because nothing's going to be white in this picture. So that would be, let that dry off, and then I will maybe stick a little bit of dark in there. But as I said, the pen will do a little bit of cross hatching, a little bit of marks here and there to give some form and shape to it. Now this is, looking at our reference, this is half screwing my eyes up, this is similar to this. So yeah, we can have it like that, but I'm really now looking at this tone to that tone to make sure this is dark enough to make that light. It's always just a little look here, look there, make sure. It's like chess really, you're doing something but you're looking at one or two moves ahead around the picture to make sure that the tones are going to be correct. But that's okay. And we'll also do a little bit on this windowsill, but this looks even lighter, so I'm going to put a little bit of ink there and then a little bit of clean water on the brush and just dab it on just like watercolor and pull it out a little bit. So we've got something like that. We've got the shutters. Now the shutters are very dark. These were of course dark green in the original picture. If you look at the original picture here, they are green, but in black and white or grayscale, that green looks very, very dark. So we've got to make these, what we can see, They're very, very dark, but they're nowhere near as dark as the slats. So we've got to try and make some ink tone that is in between. So let's have a look at this. Yes, I think the middle, which is this, that might suffice. So we'll give this a go. We'll just put it right down as a wash. Like so. Half screwing my eyes up, looking at that, looking at that. Now I can see it's nowhere near as dark as it should be. That's because looking on this scrap piece of paper, we have this along a lot of light around it. So this obviously looks darker. But this, we have lots of dark in front, just around it, and some medium tones. So in comparison to what's around it, this is now nowhere near dark enough. So I could put some darker ink from a different bottle, but that'll probably make it too dark. So I don't really need to do that. So I'll just let that dry, apply another wash over it, and that, just like watercolour, it will add to the tone. And that should sort it out. So that's that, and I can see this part here, that's a part of the windowsill, but it's quite recessed within the window, so that is obviously going to be dark. So I can put a little bit of dark there. And also I think this part of the window, well, I don't think, looking at the picture I know, that is recessed, so it's got some shadow. So I shall just put that like so. So that's pretty much it all filled in with colour. So you do need, so I think it's light dry now, so I will try another wash over this part. Now that's better. It's still not as dark as the picture, but I don't really care about that. It just needed to be darker. Now, two ways I am not really too bothered about it being that dark. One, you've still got a nice bit of tonal contrast. And two, you've still got these curtains still look like they've got sunlight on them. Now we will of course do something about that by putting in a wash over the top part. Well, if we look at the colour version, we can see what I mean here. But we can also see here on the colour, as I said, I'm going to be using a pen to do some extra markings to give texture. You can see here the thin marks to give form and shape to the curtains. That's all to come. So now this is pretty much got the tones on. I'll continue with this one, and then when it's done I'll come back. So I've just put some tone now around the white, very weak, just as we can see. It's more like a stain. We've just taken off the white paper, but it still looks very, very light. And now, as we've got this light tone, then we can start to basically build up by putting in other dark markings. A little bit of water, and just to sort of try and blend it in a little bit. Just to get some dark areas, some decay going on. Now a small brush is very good for this because it doesn't hold that much paint, and you can just, well, I suppose dry brush it, even though it's not really working well on this Bockingford paper. It's not a rag paper, so it's much darker in here. I'm just going to try a little bit of a spritzer bottle here, just to see if I can get a little bit more of a softer area at the top. Now just some general, well, trying to be a little bit of a general dry brush. Again, just here and there, just trying to make it ever so slightly darker here and there. And we're going to put a little bit more ink at the top of these curtains. Just to make them recede into the background a little bit more. Emphasize a little bit of the shadow. Now, the picture itself doesn't have any shadows, but the version I did last year did have some shadows, so I'm going to put shadows in. So as they're going to be shadows, they need to be dark, so I'm going to use the darker of these paints, which is that. And just still a bit wet, but never mind. This will should give it a bags of contrast. That's going to be under there, and that is going to be something like that. And we do the same with this, so this is going to come something like that. We'll put that out there, and then a line going down there. I think that might be dark. Now that doesn't bother me. It just adds to the charm. I mean, if you didn't want anything there, you could also try and dab it off a little bit, like so, but that really doesn't bother me too much. Now we need this more in shadow, and now this part here is going to be in shadow because I've just changed the direction of the sunlight. So this is now going to be darker all the way down there. Right, so now it's all dry. We've got some tonal values, but it is a bit flat because it hasn't got texture in. So now is the time you go in with the dipping pen again and start to add texture. So what I mean is, for example, the curtains here. We can now go back in and start to scribble in some texture, some details. For example, we can now do a few little hatch lines. Just where these folds would be. And you can see how you can get a very fine line with this this mapping pen. And with this pen you can also, as you see I'm doing now, you can basically just doodle shapes in, texture. We'll have another little fold going down there. Wasn't in originally, but it's in now. We'll put a little bit of detailing in here. As though there was another piece of wood joined on. Again, all this little stuff, all these little things, just give it a bit of texture. Maybe some texture, or maybe some grain of wood there. A little bit of hatching on this part here. It's in shadow, so we can give it a little bit of hatching. Just darkens it up slightly, but it gives it texture at the same time. And then in these parts, we can we'll do some here. Just go over it again, going over the lines, make them a little bit darker, a little bit fatter if you want, and then you can just do some little nicks. Just to make it look like it's got texture. Some little dots, some little dashes. I'm not looking at the picture, by the way. I'm just filling it in where I think I need it. See that's a big chunk out of this stone. It's not like they're in the original picture, but in my little world, it is. I'll just make that a little bit thicker. And places like this, where you'd say it's not as dark as it originally was, we can put some shade in there. Again, it's going to darken it up a little bit, but also, and more importantly, it gives it that texture to make it look like an old pen and wash, a gritty urban pen and wash. A wash, yes, because okay, it's not watercolour, but we have used washes, which is washes of ink. Now, same with this this shadow. We can just do some simple hatching here. Just like I've explained before. Now again, look how I'm holding the pen. I'm not in the detail hold. I'm right in the middle. So it gives a nice sort of even pressure. And you can't really fiddle with it in this position. You see, I'm doodling. You can't really describe it. It's simply doodling. And as we can see now, we've got a lot of detail. It looks quite loose, and very rough and ready, very urban. So all I'll do now is I'll do the same with this is the window, and then when that's got some tonal values on, we'll finish off by putting texture on the wall itself, because it's still too pristine and that will not do. So I'll do this window and I'll be back, because now I've added some textural work to this window via the pen. So now we need to do some work on the outside of the windows, outside the wall, and that's just going to be exactly the same of what I've previously done with the use of pen, and really we'll just do some marks. But if I can, I'll dip the pen into the ink. There you go, and I'll do a few little ink splatters. Always works nice when it works. It's a little bit too dark. Never mind, it all adds to it. So we've got some nice ink splatters there. So all we really need is to do some marks like this. It's not much. And perhaps just a little bit more. And finally, we can use a spot of white ink. It's not shading, it's still ink. And where can we put some of this? Let's just put a little bit on these curtains down here. Just tidy up a little bit of this window frame. Just a couple of highlights here and there. And let's see if we can get a little bit of splatter with the white ink. Even if it's over the windows, doesn't matter. It's just going to be an overall splatter. Let's just put a little bit of this white over here, just to make it look like there's a little bit of a window there. Of course, this is ink, so when it's dry, it's permanent. There, it just makes it look like there's a tiny little bit of light. And there we go, that's a picture. It's, I like it. It's very grimy, very gritty, quite high contrast. And it's just done with ink, but applied in the way you would a normal watercolour. Only difference is we've used different levels of diluted ink. It's a perfect medium for recording really old, decrepit, crumbling buildings. And that's it. That's the picture finished. What do I think? I think it turned out rather nice. It's got absolutely bags of character, is a good tonal range from very, very light to pitch blacks. And pen and ink is the perfect medium for doing this type of work. So why don't you give it a go? Pick something simple, something that's basically formed to bits, something with a good tonal range in values, and just see what happens. Chances are it'll turn out perfect. Now if you liked this little demonstration and you haven't subscribed, then please subscribe. Notify that little bell icon so you don't miss anything in the future. And talking about the future, I'll see you in the future. So until then, goodbye.